Vice President for Enrollment Success with Pikes Peak Community College. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me today. And I understand that these weeks in between semesters in student affairs are our busiest time of the year, whether it's fall to spring or summer to fall, spring to summer. So if some of you have to take off and get stuff done, I fully understand. Hopefully it's not because I'm boring you to death. So Julie had asked me to go ahead and put together a 5-10 minute presentation about myself, and then she shared with me the submitted questions from both the faculty and the staff group. So what I'm going to try to do is give you a little bit of introduction and background to myself, move into the faculty questions. I do have some slides for them, so hopefully I can get through them a little bit quicker and leave some time for questions from the group, because in all honesty, the folks in this division are the people that myself or whomever is selected for this position will be spending the most amount of their time. So I want to make sure that we get the opportunity to meet each other as best we can. So moving along, my background, I grew up in central Kansas, a little bitty town called Burton, grew up right by Hutchinson, and went to Barton County Community College as a student. I was a first generation low income student, so I totally understand our community college student plight. Afterwards, went to the University of Kansas, so that was when I kind of started, when I was at Barton, I started coaching women's basketball or high school girls basketball competitively at the time. And I changed from pre-med, I got that coaching bug, and as I think coaching profession has derailed many other careers. But so I transferred to the University of Kansas to work with Carl. I transferred to the University of Kansas, worked with the women's basketball team there, and that's how I stumbled into student affairs, which I'll speak to in a little bit, by being an assistant women's coach at the collegiate level. Since graduating from KU with my bachelor's, I got my master's there, and my doctorate just down the road at Baylor at their School of Professional Studies. How I got into student affairs is that my first job out of college was as a women's basketball coach and admissions counselor, and so I didn't know anything about student affairs until I took that job. And I started to see a lot of parallels between the two, that the development and the growth that I like to have with student athletes was the same thing I like to see in student affairs. So we took this raw student and developed them into hopefully a graduate, a certificate earner, or something like that. And so I was like, I don't know about the student affairs thing, but I'm really getting a lot of energy for it. And at a smaller school, we have multiple responsibilities. So I had both athletics and student affairs, spend a lot of time and energy there. I somehow stumbled into coaching some softball and student life, and then decided I wanted to go on and get my master's degree. So I went back to the University of Kansas, got my master's degree from 2002 to 2004. And as I was wrapping that up, I guess it was the fall of 2003, Alan reached back out to me and said, hey, our director of admissions and marketing job's opening up, and we'd love to have you come back. And so that was really when I had to consider going into student affairs essentially full time. And that was my first kind of, is this really the way you want to go? Because both my undergrad and master's were sports administration, and this was a different career path that my degrees were in. And I decided that was the right move for me. I went there I served as an interim director of athletics for a little while our current director of athletics was was stationed to Iraq with our local reserve unit. And then in 2007, our Dean of Students and Athletic Director position, which while I was there moved into a vice presidency, so I kind of interchanged them, came open, and our president said, Randy, I'd really like for you to serve in that role. You've got the right experience and background in both those areas. So that's my background in student affairs. Recently, I moved out to Pikes Peak Community College in June of 2012, and really my purpose for doing so is I kind of hit a ceiling at Allen. I did just about everything I felt I could do there along my professional journey, and I really knew that I wanted to commit to being, I knew I was a better student affairs professional who supported athletics and an athletic administrator who supported student affairs. So I wanted my life's work really to be in student affairs. And at Pikes Peak, we had a lot more opportunity and resources, and I interviewed at a couple different places, and the president there said one thing to me during my interview that made me say, this is the place. In this time, I kept going to these interviews, and people were saying, can you do more with less? Can you do more with less? Well, that's not a very inviting question, but it's a necessary question in today's arena. And he said, we have resources we want to invest in ourselves, and we're only performing average, and we want to be above average. And I was like, by golly, that's the environment I want to be in. And so, since I've been there in the last 2.5 years, we spent a lot of time working on our academic advising model, removing barriers for students at entry, and kind of creating some communication management strategies. I want to make sure you can read all those. I'll spend a little more time talking about some of those things later. And then I've been our accreditation liaison officer for anybody who works with HLC. I don't know if that's something exciting or punishment that one receives on a campus, but that's part of a role I've received as we transition, just because process management is something that I spend time doing pretty well. So, why am I here? Why? I'm in a great area, great position. I have mountains. I'm sorry, I don't like mountains a lot. So why Johnson County for me? In all honesty, it's the vision of the college. I told the committee when I did the Skype interview, and Alicia and Pam and some others were in there, and I said, Johnson County wants to be a national leader through educational excellence and innovation. There are probably, in all honesty, 10 to 15 community colleges in the country who can say that and mean it. And I believe Johnson to be one of those schools. And the thing that Johnson has that none of the other schools that I could consider would have is its home. I grew up here. My mom lives in Topeka. I've got family and friends in Kansas City and Lawrence. So, this is the type of place that I tell my wife, we can talk about forever home and, what are you looking for and something like that, rather than continuing to move around. So that's why I'm here and why I have interest in this position. So I'm going to move on to the faculty questions, and I'm going to move them through them fairly swiftly. I don't want to rush, but I want to move them through them swiftly and give them the attention that I feel they deserve. But in follow-up questions, I'll probably leave some ambiguity that if you have any reason to want to follow up, please do. So the first question was framed around Dr. Shugard's, who's president of Valencia's article in Inside Higher Ed, and he said, we're being asked to achieve much greater results with fewer resources to engage a needier student population in an atmosphere of serious skepticism. So it's a really good introduction to this question. And interestingly enough, I read this article that he wrote, and it was because he was a faculty member on an institute I attended a year ago. And the context of this was really in support of one of his friends who had just taken a presidency at Austin Community College. And basically he was welcomed to town with a sign that says, Austin Community College has a graduation rate of 4%. Is that a good use of taxpayer money? So that was his welcome. It was put up by taxpayers. So welcome. So I'm going to relate back to this a little bit with the staff questions, because I think it ties in a little bit with the key needs question. But specifically the questions that were framed were the key needs of the department within the branch to create this reality. And I have to be careful here, because I've done a lot of research. I feel like I know student affairs, but saying that, knowing the individual and true key needs of this college, I don't think it would be fair for me to say without getting to know the college and the people of the college better. But I'm going to give it a little bit of a hack here. And this is kind of just along the lines of some national stuff. If we're facing greater attention and accountability for completion. We used to be access. Community colleges, access, access, access. No greater point of access for students than the community college. But now all of a sudden people are saying, well, what about your completion? What about your output? Dr. Shugard had a really nice analogy that he used with raw product and finished goods and industrialization, and what are we doing with students in that. So we have to be more intrusive. In all honesty, we can't just say, well, we're here and it's a student's right to succeed or fail on their own. People are asking us, what are you doing to help students succeed? What is your intent in helping students succeed? And so we have to be more intrusive. Now this here is, should look familiar to most of you, hopefully. These are from the Johnson County Key Performance Indicators. And this one here is tied around registration effectiveness, and these are your null limits results. I think you administer it probably, every 2 years? That's pretty common. I see some heads nodding, so we'll say 2 years. So registration effectiveness from student satisfaction has been increasing over the last couple of years. But if you see this bar here at the top, that's the top quartile. So of national results, that's the top quartile. So when I see a key performance indicator that says we want to be in the top quartile and we're not there, I think a key need is going to be tied to registration effectiveness processes. That's going to be an area that, to me, I want to start with conversations about where are you at, where are you headed, and what resources do we need. But I can't come in and pretend to have the answers. I've been through a journey in my institution, at 2 different institutions, but it'd be a different journey here. The next thing I saw is academic advising and counseling seems to be an area that's in the key performance indicators that you put into your strategic plan and your SWOT analysis that you want to spend some time and energy on. And when I think about these 2, they're both very process driven. And for me, I like process driven stuff. It's kind of a puzzle. We put it together, we figure it out. We assess how we were when we started. We assess is it getting better? Is it more effective? Or we're just doing things different? So that's kind of the inner geek in me talking out. I love processes. The thing that excites me the most about these 2 is right here. The concern for the individual. And that's where Johnson's in the top quartile already. I would much rather work with colleagues who genuinely care about students and their success than have to come to work and motivate people to try to care about students. So I feel like these first 2 right here are very achievable because people care. So it's just getting together and saying what's working, what are resources available to us, are we using them to their greatest optimism, et cetera, et cetera. So I look forward to when I look at key needs and say there's real opportunity there, but it sounds like the right people are in place to move the bar. The next part of the same question, 1A and B, and for those who are HLC analogists, there's a lot of like multi-part single questions here that made me feel very HLC. It's like 4 questions within a question. But I said, please share examples with how you've done this in your current position. So when I got to Pikes Peak, I got an early win, and I felt like I wanted to work the room, but obviously everybody's over here. So when I got to Pikes Peak, they had a drop for down payment process that had went horribly the year before. A lot of nasty pushback from students and families. And so they had committed to changing their process. And in doing so, they said, we're not going to drop students till census. And I'm sitting there thinking purge and financial aid and all these other things that I'm moving into. I'm like, we're going to figure this out. But they committed to it. They bought in. The more I dug in with them, what I realized was I don't think their former process was what was failed. What was failed was their former communication. So they put a lot of mass communication out there on their jumbo screens, on their TV screens, and that when students came to campus, they were definitely made aware or had the opportunity to be made aware of the drop and non-payment process. Well, when I started asking questions like, well, who has actually dropped? Who's most mad at you? And it turns out to be people, high school students, who had payment arrangements to their high schools, military students who were available for chapter dependency, cash-only students whose parents pay their bills. And I'm like, we're not reaching out to them and giving them the message they need to hear. They don't think we're talking to them. Parents are paying the bills, the parents aren't on the campus. So we had to change it, and we changed it from, so one of the questions I asked earlier was, well, can we send them a bill? No, we can't bill till census. I said, okay, but we know how much they owe, right? Can we send them an invoice that looks and feels and tastes a lot like them? Yeah, we can do that. So let's send them an invoice. So we started to change this process to where it was targeted, and when they received that, it created this action step for them. And so that's something where I spend a lot of time is targeted communications and not just say, well, we did our due diligence by making students aware. So no, we reached out and we built a campaign for that student, and there were multiple touch points that they missed, and so we feel less responsible for their inaction. So a lot of that along the lines of recruitment and admissions campaigns. We've done a lot of things we built in. We're bringing in Banner Recruiter, and so building those individualized campaigns for students there, a lot of time and energy. The other thing that's exciting to me that we've done along this line is our enrollment campaign. And so we tried something for the first time this semester with continuing students, because we get frustrated because they don't enroll when they should. We know they should enroll for the next semester. And it's like, really? Here you are creating our long lines at the end, not getting the courses you need for your program. So we did a lot of targeted marketing toward them. In text blitz, we always got nervous about whether this text is effective, is it going to work for us or not? And we found it did. They when they're our student and it's specific to them, they don't mind getting the message. They've all got plans now with a gazillion and 50 texts, so it's not a big deal. But they appreciated us reaching out to them saying, enrollment starts November 10th. The other thing that we did, I thought that was a really good success for us, is we reached out to our students who had holds on their accounts, who should be continuing students for a variety of reasons why they had holds. And we said, November 4th, we sent them a text and said, hey, enrollment opens November 10th, and we'd like for you to enroll, but you're not going to be able to do it till you get your hold addressed. And then, lo and behold, the week before registration, they're all dealing with their hold. They didn't show up to our counseling and advising office saying, okay, I'm ready to enroll. No, you're not. Now I have to go deal with this hold. So we made better use of their time. We identified them. We created a plan and an action for them to do at the right time, and we moved forward with it. So that's why I spend a lot of my time and energy right now. So the next steps, to me, are creating a more intrusive student success model. There's some things out there at the front end that Banner's got a product out there now that they call Pilot. There's a couple others out there that take your current learning management system, so D2L here, and it will take the information that's already being put in about the student, and you can create some risk models and some case management stuff based on them. And the failure with tools to this point is that what we've done is we've asked faculty, instructional faculty, to create an alert. Take another step. You're already teaching your class, take another step. I spoke with students a couple last session, and they were talking about the impact and the reality of adjunct faculty. When we have adjunct faculty teaching a lot of our courses, we only have so much professional development we can give them. We can't keep throwing tools at them to use. So the next step in the student success model really is going to be something that's more intuitive, that's going to take the work you're already doing and create your caseload for risk management. And that's where I want to spend a lot of my time and energy, and what kind of keeps motivating me to move the next step in student affairs. And the Community College Research Center has this thing, it's called Readiness for Technology Adoption Framework. And it talks about, your technology and your culture, your institutional level and your project level. And I'll go back to why I'm intrigued about Johnson County, is because I believe that Johnson has the ability to, with the resources available, to do much more than I can in my current position. We have some real system limitations. Our system office has one instance of Banner for 13 schools. For those of you who use Banner a lot, there would be a lot of limitations with that. That said, I love it. I don't want to bash it, but it just creates a lower ceiling of opportunity than I think Johnson or maybe a couple other schools have. The second question for this group, and I have to be careful with this one because this is where I've spent a lot of time in the last year and a half, so I'm going to watch my time and try to push this sleep, is tied to the advising model, centralized, departmental, or hybrid, pros and cons, and what do we use. And I have to say my personal philosophy, because we spent the last year and a half building ours, and I actually just presented at AcroSim in Los Angeles about a month and a half ago on this. And we received a lot of real positive feedback, and I'm always cautious with people. I'm like, I'm really excited about our plan, but I don't feel confident until we get outcomes. And we don't really have outcomes yet, but all the initial responses we're getting from a lot of folks in the know are that we're headed the right direction on this. We kind of went with, I guess, what we call a hybrid here, but we're really calling it a shared model. And our shared model is because we did a survey of staff, students, and faculty, and I got 26 pages here that really talked about advising experiences, what goes into it, what should be there, what shouldn't be there, what should be faculty only, what should be professional advisor only, what doesn't belong in the students. And I use the word advising a lot, and I know that counseling here, so they're interchangeable, and I promise I'm trainable. I can change if I need to, but advising is my world. So counseling. So what we said is there are certain things that students need in the experience that our instructional faculty don't feel that they are equipped or ever will be equipped to provide. Registration information, building a schedule. I don't think anybody really wants to build a schedule. They want to help students select courses and work on that, so some tools. But then what we learned through our research too is our faculty who are passionate about advising students didn't want to lose that interaction. So we couldn't go fully centralized. We couldn't go fully departmental either. I was telling these counselors up here a couple minutes ago, 75% of our enrollment for the fall semester occurs when faculty are not required to be available to students. So it's an access issue. So we can't really say departmental, and we know when that rush is. So we have to serve them when they come to us. But what they said is, I want to engage with the student. I want to talk to them about their journey once they leave us. I know more about the program in the career field, depending on whether they're transfer or career, than your professional advisors do. And we say, we understand that. We know how to get them through our journey here, but you know more about what to do with them once they're past here. So we co-assign them, and every student has the right and the opportunity to have an academic plan. We use DegreeWorks, degree plan. I think that that's what you guys are using too. So the degree audit, I don't know how far along, if you spent much time on the new plan option that they have, but it's pretty intuitive and pretty impactful. So what our instructional departments have done this year is they built a lot of program templates for full-time and part-time models, and we've been able to pull some of those and use those as a starting point, and they've gone in tremendously with this. So that's where I'm at. So our instructional faculty work on student engagement. So how's it going here? They help them select electives, maybe with their transfer career, they get them in the industry. When I was speaking with students, Graydon, who's in the hospitality program, was talking about how his greatest impact here has been a faculty member who got him to quit working at Hy-Vee, and he works at the best hotel here in town, who's in the hospitality management program, and it was the relationship he made with his instructor who helped him do that, and that's why that relationship is still so critical. So our journey, and I'll graze through this real quick, is we spent a lot, we had a task force, and it was co-led by our Vice President for Instruction and myself, so I tried to bring a lot of the content knowledge. She just retired in June, so she had been into the school for over 25 years. She had the relationship. By having her at the table and building that close relationship with her, I was able to ask the tough and uncomfortable questions as a newer person at the college, because the relationships and trust she had built with the stakeholders helped me. And so that's important as I go through process management and change. And like, who are the key stakeholders? Who are the people that can give us that instant credibility we need as we move forward? Our model was designed around commitment to each student's goal and plan for achievement. So what we try to do is say, we want to identify a student's goal and track that goal as soon as possible. And it can change, but they need to be working toward a goal. And even if that goal is career development, not a specific program, then let's work on that goal of career development, because wandering students we're finding are not succeeding in community colleges. So it's around that, a plan for achieving that goal, like I said, whether it's the program they know they want or whether the goal is really going to be in 2 years, we're going to be lucky if we can get you to a transfer institution with a career in mind. But we're going to do that self-exploration. Rick and Paul gave me a tour earlier, and Rick showed me the mindset of the career development office, and it's really deep. That who am I? You know, that's that first step of that. We do a tiered method of advisor training, so we have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Our tier 3 are our centralized professional advisors who can go into DegreeWorks and build a plan with the student. They know how to speak to a certain level of a lot of the registration experiences for students. So they're knowledgeable in the student registration and plan development. So that's what we call a tier 3. What we say for instructional and faculty is we're not going to assign a student to you until you're tier 2, which means you don't have to be able to build a degree plan with the students, but you need to be able to review it. And so if you review it with them and say, okay, I don't know how to build it in there, go back to our career CP&A, career planning and advising, and have them change your plan, then that is there. But every faculty who will be assigned a student who's in their program will have to have been through the tier 2 training. This is a commitment our college made with very, very widespread support. And then our tier 1 is basically, we learned that across the college we don't really do well with referral services, and we found that whether it's an adjunct faculty, a student staff, or anybody in between, you know a student needs help, but you don't know where to send them. So what we said is a tier 1 is somebody who can, one, give the same answer to our advising experience. When I got to Pikes Peak, I said, what's the advising model here? And if I asked 20 people, I got 21 answers. I mean, it was really kind of just discombobulated. So we have a singular answer for that and support for referrals. So that's how our tier works. And then lastly, what's worked very well for us is we have divisions to the academic. We have liaisons to the academic divisions. And the interesting thing about that, in the next slide, I'm going to speak to that a bit, is we kind of came to this conclusion that we have historically advised our students into our academic divisions, what makes sense to us. And we have one division, we call it dance to diesel, because it's got everything, it's got dance and it's got diesel, it's got everything in between. So they don't fit real well. And so we started passing students among advisors and things like that, and they started to feel like, I can't identify a goal if I can't build a relationship with somebody who's going to help me identify that. So what we did was we took the Colorado career clusters that already exist, And we said, we're going to take our academic divisions and we're going to reassign them to the clusters that already exist in there. And this is something that from NACADA, for those who are NACADA members, from ACRO, some of these, that they've really been impressed that we had the wherewithal to do. So you see some of these like, what's that say, hospitality, human services, and education. That cluster has 2 different academic divisions in there. So we feel the pain point, not the student. And that's something that we changed is how do we make our processes more student friendly? And we'll do the work behind the scenes so they don't see it, because it's not really fair to expect them to feel those pain points. And a lot of excitement and work has went into this and positive. So we had that student who's an engineering major, they say, but they can't get past developmental math. So how far are they going to get in that engineering program? Well, we don't want to deflate that student. So we'll say, how about CAD? You know, there's some CTE programs in there that are some really handy, and that's how those things align better. Maybe a pre-med or a nursing. I think we accept 50 nursing students a fall and 50 a spring, and we have 1,600 pre-nursing students. I'm not real good at math, but I don't think they're all getting in. So how do we take them and we decide what else can we do with them? Phlebotomy is an option, CNA can be an option. So there's some different things there, so they don't feel like their singular goal is lost. The third question here for faculty, and then I'll turn it over for additional questions, is share with you the experience with working in supervising faculty, and then like I said, what are the strengths and weaknesses of shared governance? What I see here is that you guys were asked to come up with 3 questions and you couldn't agree, so we stuck some of them together. I can work with that though. So at Allen, our Student Success Center, we dealt with our counseling, our guidance counseling, and our undecided advising, and those were faculty contract personnel. So I knew how to work with our faculty contract. We had some who were 9 months, some who were 12 months. And then a lot of my coaches in athletics, as my role as athletic director, might have been on a faculty contract for their other responsibilities. So I would have supervised them for athletics, but not for faculty. To me, honestly, the key is to both respect and honor the roles and responsibilities of each employee in their position. You know, we have limitations with anybody we work with. We just need to make sure we work within those. You know, sometimes things have to change. Sometimes we know limitations. Our advising model, honestly, was limited by faculty contract. We wanted to do something different with CTE than we did with transfer, but we couldn't really ask faculty to advise differently based on their contract. So we worked with it, and we came up with a model that best worked for us. So that seems to work effectively for me to this point, as to honor the employee group and who they are and what their roles and responsibilities are. And in Colorado, actually, our classified group are the most cantankerous because they're state employees, so they're really limited. I'll have a lot of people say who are classified, and there's no real rhyme or reason as to it. Who will say, well, I want to do this for a student, or I want to do that, and I have to say, I can't let you do that because you're working outside your classification, and then I would be held responsible for allowing you. So it's even there. It's not sometimes asking them to do more. Sometimes, in this case, it was limiting them, saying, I know you have the abilities, but we can't, within your role, allow you to do that. So it's something I'm accustomed to working with. That doesn't scare me. And then on shared governance, a couple of strengths that I see is, obviously, and we have a shared governance model at JCCC, that it's collaborative. You can have transparent decision making, so people know what's going on, what options are there. There's the power of collective thoughts and perspectives. I don't think that many individuals hold the market on good ideas. I think the more mind you bring into a room or the conversation, the greater ideas you have. And I'm personally not super creative, so I take appreciation of people who are creative. I'm very linear and process oriented. Okay, how are we going to do this? So shared governance also allows that creative person to say, well, what if, and move that direction. The thing I think is the greatest strength, though, is that you get ownership from people in the process. If I'm part of the decision and I'm part of the responsibility for the outcome, there's a greater likelihood that I'm going to make sure that the decision is a successful one. And so I really like shared governance from that standpoint, that you have automatic credibility and buy-in. A couple of weaknesses that I see, sometimes it's not very nimble when necessary. Sometimes you need a decision to be immediate because we're facing a timeline, and members of shared governance process will sometimes say, well, I wasn't included in that conversation, and no, you weren't, and we understand that, and we would have liked to have maybe included you in it. However, the timing was not in our favor when we made this. And then lastly, so we deal with a lot of compliance and regulatory issues in education, and we continue to get more and more in a day. And so sometimes decisions are made for us. There isn't any wiggle room. And what I've seen in our shared governance model is people say, well, I didn't get input once again. And I think that that's not a decision-making process, that's a communication issue. When you deal with something where it's compliance and regulatory and nobody really had to be part of the decision, then you have to be able to communicate to people and say, this is where we're moving forward and this is why no leeway was given, because we want to continue to fill out Title IV funds, we want to, whatever the case may be. So that becomes a communication, just helping people understand that no, we're not trying to operate outside of our shared governance structure, we're just trying to operate in a compliant regulatory manner. So that's my attempt at those three questions. We do have some time left over and I asked Julie, I said the first group, and with the presentation and that, could run a little bit longer, so it was okay for some bleed over time, and she said there wasn't any problem there. So I'd love to answer any additional questions that you guys may have. Not all at once. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that academic advising is your world, in your current role. What do you do with students who have additional needs? When they fit outside those tiers, do they have personal issues or mental health issues? Is there a counseling center on your campus, or how does that work?
So, just in case you couldn't hear, the question was, what do we do with, since academic advising is kind of my world, what do we do with students who need additional support? And that's where we ran into the issues where we said we want everybody essentially who's employed at the college to be a tier 1 advisor, because what we decided with our new academic advising model is that our advisors were going to quit trying to be all things to all people, and that was where we have some stopgaps. They tried to fix too many things. So we had to understand where my role as a student stops and where somebody who's better trained to work with that student begins. So we have a student crisis and resource center, yes, that has trained professional guidance counselors who work with students on counseling things. Our system legal doesn't like them to become a counseling office, so we're really careful with doing a lot of personal counseling there, but getting through their academic journey stuff. There we have retention services where we work with those affective things, students who have run into issues with child care and transportation and like I say, those, not the academic resources, we have academic tutoring and things like that. And a lot of students barrier to success may be an affective issue that they're dealing with. And so what we're really trying to do is say, okay, well, I'm going to refer you over there. The tool that we brought in that is more intentional about this is we have brought in what is called SARS scheduling software. What a terrible name, SARS, huh? But it allows the divisions to essentially schedule or add a student to a drop-in list somewhere. And I think that was the next step that really helped us. Rather than saying, yeah, you got to go over there, it's, well, I'm going to put you on their drop-in right now. They're going to be expecting you. And so that creates that accountability. Well, I better go show up over there, or I'll come back Monday. And so we track them. So rather than just referring students, and that's where people got scared. Well, if I refer them, how do I know that they're going to get what they need? And the answer became, well, we're going to track them, and if we put them on the drop-in, or we schedule an appointment and they no-show, we're going to outreach to them and say, hey, we were expecting you, what happened? So we do referral services, and we don't try to let our advisors be all things to all people, because we have a huge military population, and there are so many needs with military students. We're going to set you up for failure. Financial aid, I know just enough to be dangerous. I don't need advisors doing financial aid advising and a cubicle there. But we need to make sure the students get it, so that then we put them on the drop-in. Great question, thank you. Yes, sir.
I think you said, just to make sure, at Allen County, the advisors or faculty, is that what you said, but not at Pikes Peak?
So, yeah, so to clarify, the models at both Allen and Pikes Peak. So at Allen, I will call it a faculty model, but we had an access issue where most of our students who enrolled in faculty weren't available. So we would assign them to a faculty member, but the fact is they wanted to advise today so they could get into those classes. They were either going to go self-advise or they were going to take somebody in the Student Success Center. So we had a few generalist advisors, but as soon as we had a generalist, we assigned them to a faculty member. Whereas at Pikes Peak, we have a centralized advising office. And that's where it was when I said we had so many answers, because nobody could give a good answer. You know, how are we doing this? Well, some people were going straight to the division. We had divisions hiring faculty and adjunct faculty to do advising during break and rush times. We were just all over the radar, and it wasn't a singular model. And, you know, by nature, I'm not the type of person that wants to come in right off the bat and be a change agent and say, okay, you know, I know this. Coming in, they knew they wanted me to work on academic advising, so I started in June. We set the institutional focus goal in October, saying advising model is going to be addressed. We developed our team in November and had our model identified for essentially the next November. I actually reached out to Dennis here and asked him about, because I knew you guys had done some work on yours, and the specific question I remember asking him was, career and transfer, did you treat them different? If so, why, or would you do it? And you know, he gave me some real good feedback on how you do it here. But we had a centralized office, but we had a lot of faculty doing that. And so when we came up with this model, we really had an issue with bringing the starting point, and particularly in our career tech programs, bringing those program and department faculty to a trust level with us to say, let them start here. We'll make sure they get on the right sequence. And that's how they had a really good buy-in with a couple Fridays, about 6-8 Fridays ago. We did this day where they built their program templates and say, you know, we can read, you know, charts and figure out what course is next in that, and we're accessible to a student. And so we kind of morphed it from any and everything from all divisions to start with your centralized. And one of the points of feedback we got was that we got from faculty, I'm sociology faculty, and you just gave me an AA student who doesn't care about sociology. Why am I advising this student? Because we're giving everybody a faculty advisor. So we realized that wasn't effective either. So what we do is we keep them in the centralized area until they have an identified program. That's when the faculty wants to relate with them, is when you're interested in my program, I'm interested in you. Instead of just everybody gets X amount of advisees, and so a ton of our AA and our AAS students just get lumped into general faculty. We'll keep them, we'll do career exploration with them, we'll try to get them to a point where they can identify a program.
So as a follow-up, with our counselor, we have a centralized model here, and our counselors are faculty. So based on the answers you gave, do you see your approach being the same when you're dealing with teaching faculty and departmental situations as you look at our situation, since we're centralized and we are faculty?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and like I said, it becomes a language, and I know it's a role responsibility issue, and I in doing my research, I have learned and understand that the counselors are faculty, and so oftentimes I'll say counselors and academic advisors, and when I say faculty often, and from my past experience, I do mean departmental or instructional, you know, faculty. So I do think it's transferable, and I look at it more as a kind of that same type of shared model where it would be our counseling faculty kind of do the intake, goal identification, figure out a strategy, where we're at, are we doing career with you, are we assigning you to a program or something like that. So that's how it would transfer here. And so, and when I talk about my past and I use advisor, I really, in this context, would mean counseling faculty here. And like I said, I'm trainable, I can learn it, but it's not my everyday language, so that's why it's a little bit confusing. I apologize.